Hi, I'm Shan Wu with a Undercolor of Law analysis of what's going on with the English-only executive order that Donald Trump wants to sign. It's actually not an English-only executive order. He wants to sign one that makes English the official language of the United States because he feels that's something that is very important. Now, what is the very practical effect of the order? And then we'll talk about what's really behind the order. It mostly would have the effect of rescinding an order by President Clinton, remember him, which mandated that you provide English assistance to non-English speakers. That's in federal government programs and aids. Now, what Trump wants to do is to make that go away. And what's behind that? He doesn't want to provide government services to anyone who doesn't fit his, Vance, and Musk's, a South Africaner, idea of what Americans should look like, sound like. And what this is going to carry over into is different agencies may take away their bilingual brochures, instructions in different languages. Doesn't require them to take it away. It's not like the DEI strike force where it delete any mention of the phrases diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's mostly symbolic in that sense. But is it mostly symbolic? Let's think for a moment, how ironic is it that Trump supporters are blind to the hypocrisy of their complaints about the government bothering them about what they can do? For example, the government wants to regulate their ability to have hundreds of guns per person, but they don't care about the government mandating what you can do in the bedroom, who you love, what you look like, how you dress, and what language can you speak, right? That's something that seems perfectly fine to them. So let's put up the headline about that here. And as this article points out, there aren't any attacks here going on people really speaking Dutch or German or Swedish, right? What is this really about? It's primarily about people who speak Spanish. Let's be real about that. That's what Trump is fixated on with his racist ideology. The idea that brown people coming from the South are coming here and he wants them to be ostracized and he wants to make sure he doesn't have to hear them speaking any language except English. Now, the English as the official language goes back a long time, a really long time. Even Ben Franklin was concerned about this because he was worried that other European cultures, like maybe the German influence, would be too strong. Fast forward a little bit, Teddy Roosevelt, who was a very fascinating president in a lot of ways, had some really great ideas, but he was kind of a racist in his own way. He himself felt that the only language that should be spoken in the U.S. was English. Fast forward even further to the 1970s, I think it was, when the first Japanese-American senator, S.I. Hayakawa, a very controversial figure, mostly a liberal guy, we'll put up a picture of S.I. there. He was an immigrant, Japanese, and he very much felt that you had to make English the official language in the U.S. So you get this cross-section. Sometimes you may have noticed that immigrants can be quite conservative in some of their views here. I think he was very misplaced on that, and we'll talk about why. But the problem with people who want to advocate this idea of making English the official language is these are outmoded ideas. It's based on fear, and there's just nothing inclusive about it. And inclusion is very healthy. It's not just some charity that's being given away. It makes for a better society, better economic society, better society in terms of people getting along, and it makes people smarter, actually. There have been studies that show that bilingual kids test higher on IQs sometimes. And from a practical standpoint, we'll return to this later, it's obviously very helpful to people. In fact, the idea that there's a problem with English in the US, meaning we better designate it as the official language before we lose it, is just complete nonsense. I mean, anybody knows that. Maybe Trump actually doesn't know that. Most of the world wants to learn English, and most of the world actually does learn English. There's almost no country you can go to where someone can't speak a smattering of English. When immigrants come here, like my parents did, they don't want to not learn English. They want to be able to communicate. My own parents, for me, were actually many immigrant parents have this concern. They don't even want English spoken. They don't want their native language spoken at home. They want only English spoken at home because they want to make sure their kids don't have an obstacle to success in the U.S. And really, most immigrant kids who may come here, I was born here, so I didn't have this advantage of knowing Chinese already. I was born here. Many of the people I've met who came here speaking not a word of English, within a couple of years, and their children have actually forgotten all their native language, speak only English. In my instance, my parents really tried to speak Chinese to me as I was learning English, different story about how I did that, so that I could learn to think in both languages. But there's not a problem where people don't want to learn English. Immigrants come here, they're oftentimes in immigrant enclaves, Chinatowns, little Saigons. They're not there because they don't want to assimilate. That's the old racist notion. They're there because racism has put them there. The oppressing class, the majority, doesn't want to share in the economic benefits, is ostracizing people to look different. That's why they congregate there for community support. They can speak the language there because their English isn't that good yet. And these sorts of enclaves, even in the black community, look at the Tulsa massacre. That was the so-called Black Wall Street massacre there. There's an enclave of blacks who were doing well. They had their own community, and it got destroyed in a moment of racist violence. So those enclaves, rather than being some sort of a threat to the broader majority, it's the other way around. We've always had enclaves like that, whether it be German, Irish, Italian, Asian, Vietnamese, because when the immigrants first came, they felt threatened by the majority. And they often were subjected to violence from the majority. Now, more than 30 U.S. states actually do have a law under their state law that makes English the official language in their state. So, question, I can't even name all those 30 states. Is there some difference there? Like, are they doing better than other states? Is there some qualitative difference because they have that? No, of course not. It's just stoking fear to bring that type of notion up. And the Newsweek article I'll put up for you has an interesting point that is part of Trump's broader immigration policy reform. That's not really true because making English the official language has nothing to do with immigration reform. What it does have to do is with trying to demonize immigrants and trying to put them down and trying to, again, appeal to his racist base or people who don't sound racist, but they're dying for the opportunity to get to act like racists, to say that these folks need to be treated differently. We need to stop this invasion of people that are taking away our culture, taking away our language. And it's just a complete lie. The idea here is that he wants to narrow access not only to wealth, but to communication. That's the deeper level here, because this is all about communication. You'll probably see some challenges to this if he signs it, which I'm sure he will, under a First Amendment notion, because it's discriminating. You have the right to say what you want, speak what you want under the First Amendment. It's a First Amendment violation. But it's really about trying to consolidate their power base, not just by money grabbing, but by narrowing people's access to information and to communication. Musk, for example, wants Twitter to be the official communication device of the government because he can control a lot of communication that way. And if you make it harder for people to understand government services, understand their rights, then it's easier for you to not give them the benefit of what you want to keep for yourself. And that's what it's really about. We'll close here for a second with a very old video. It's a little bit grainy, but it's kind of cute to see it, so take a listen to that.
I don't understand when people are going around worrying about, we need to have English only. They want to pass a law. We want English only. Now, I agree that immigrants should learn English. I agree with that. But understand this. Instead of worrying about whether immigrants can learn English, they'll learn English. You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish. You should be thinking about how can your child become bilingual. We should have every child speaking more than one language. It's embarrassing It's embarrassing when Europeans come over here. They all speak English, they speak French, they speak German, and then we go over to Europe, and all we can say is merci beaucoup.
So there, Obama is reminding us that, as he says, he wants immigrants to learn English, and as I say, they all want to learn English, but he's reminding us how important it is for us to learn other languages so that we can understand the world better, we can communicate better, we can be broader brained, so to speak, which is good for our thinking. It's good for our children to be able to speak in other languages because there's a global sense of business and they need to be able to function on that scale. This idea of making English the official language, all part of sort of America first nonsense, which is really making America last, withdrawing, making it more and more insular, that's just the opposite of what a powerful and broad scope is supposed to accomplish for a country. It gets narrower, it gets smaller, and it gets weaker. That's the end of it. So that's it for now. We'll keep an eye on that and see what the consequences may be. And thanks again for replies and comments. Always good to hear from you. It's really great to hear, in particular, what you are focusing on in this kind of onslaught of daily changes and daily outrageous behavior. And we're trying to go through that with you and try and sort through it with you. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.